Wait till a few more people come. I guess we could start chatting. Okay. Is everybody coming? Nobody knows that I'm here? Where's the ditch in the right? There it is. Okay. So ready? Okay. So what we're going to do this evening is something a little bit different for the Sunday program. We're going to address, and actually it's going to be participatory with all of you. This is going to be a Bhagavad-Gita test for every one of you. Because I'm going to present to you some of the nonsense that's coming out in the academic world that some of our students have had to deal with about Bhagavad-Gita. And we're going to deal with the chronology, we're going to deal with the teleology, the purpose of the Gita, we're going to deal with the caste system, basically those different things. We'll start with the chronology. But first we'll chant. What's that? Uh-oh. Turn 7 down on the mixer. A little bit. See 7? Just turn it down a little bit. That's all right. Should be all right now. Still high. 7. You see the 7 on the mixer? Okay. Yeah, that's good. Okay. Still getting it. All the way in the bottom. It's all the way down. Push the button on the top of 7. That's right. Turn down the volume on the amplifier. Turn them all down a little bit. Down, all the way down. Amplifier. The 2 amplifiers down there. Just turn them down a notch. Okay? Okay. Should be all right. That's good. Whoops. Let me. Got it? Okay. That's definitely down enough. Bo. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya, all Satara Satashi Shimad, His Divine Grace, Abhaya Chanananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami, Srila Prabhupada Jai, ISKCON Founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Anandakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Friends say, oh Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kunda, Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai, Vrindavan Ki Jai, Charanam Ki Jai, Sami Ki Jai, Purvai Ki Jai, Shrimati Tulasi Devi Ki Jai, Samveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Bol. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Pudle Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaur Hari Pajani Nirvasesha Shankavadi Paschatyadesh Tardi. Small crowd today. So, actually, let me take this. Can everybody hear me? I want you to turn the volume up now with the, because I had it down because of the guitar. And now I have my mask on too. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. How about now? Everybody hears me all right back there? Okay. So Om Ganat Miranda Shagananjana Shlakaya Chakshur Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who kindly opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So tonight we want to do something a little special. We're going to be testing all of you on the Bhagavad-Gita, and also testing myself. And the reason this came up, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I got a note from one of my students, my Surrender Soul students, who's attending a course in the university, and it's a course on literature. And of course, one of the most famous literatures in the world is Bhagavad-Gita, right? And so they have a presentation about the Bhagavad-Gita, dealing with the chronology, dealing with the caste system, dealing with the purpose of the Bhagavad-Gita. And I want to address, I have a copy of some of the things these people said. First of all, they attribute the Bhagavad-Gita to a text, of course, the Mahabharata, they include it in the Mahabharata. They say that the Bhagavad-Gita is 1,000 years old. So we know, of course, we do know, that the Bhagavad-Gita was spoken 5,000 years ago and written by Srila Vyasadeva, or spoken or dictated by Srila Vyasadeva sometime later, after the Bhagavad-Gita was spoken. So why or how are people so much wrong on the dating of the Bhagavad-Gita? So let's examine how they date the Bhagavad-Gita and how they date the Vedic literatures. There's this system, now I'm going to get a little technical for all of you. There's this system of analyzing the type of Sanskrit that's used. You know, there's what's called the Vedic Sanskrit, and then there's, of course, we have modern Sanskrit, and then medieval Sanskrit, different Sanskrits like that. So every language is like that. Language does change. Just like if any of you have read Shakespeare. Anybody here has read Shakespeare? Shakespeare, okay. Some of the language that Shakespeare uses is quite different than I would use with all of you. You might not understand some of my nomenclature. Because obviously the language has changed since Shakespeare wrote his various plays. I mean, some things are the same, like out, out, damn, spot, Anyway, life's a poor player that struts his frets his time upon the stage and then is heard no more. I mean, certain things are understandable. When I studied Shakespeare at the university, basically the teacher had to translate many of the phrases for me. So there is a theory of language change, which is called Glottochronology. Some of you may have heard that word before. And it's a theory. And based on that, they date certain texts, not only the Vedic text, but other texts like that. But this theory is just a theory. It's actually been shown to be faulty in many ways, because language does not change at a constant rate. Actually, sometimes language changes at a quicker rate and sometimes a slower rate. Just like right now, I'm talking to people who go to the university, and they can't understand what I'm saying. Because many of the words, like if I say, isn't that cool? Well, of course, they say, one thing is common nowadays, they say, he's really bad. And I said, you're committing a great mad elephant offense against that person. And they said, no, he's bad. They say about me, you're really bad. The disciple says to me, you're really bad. I said, don't you say you're not supposed to offend your guru? Well, bad means good nowadays. Right? He's really cool, it's the same thing as cool. So anyway, language changes. So it's based upon the speculative theories of changing language. And based upon those speculative theories, they date the Vedic literatures. And also based upon their concept of the superiority of the Western civilization. And really it comes from this false speculation, what was called the Aryan Invasion. Anyone's heard about that before? Which has actually been proven to be absolutely false. The reason that theory of the Aryan Invasion came about was because people in the West, I think it was Sir Henry James or something like that, who first studied Sanskrit, were so shocked that Sanskrit was more complex and more scientific than Greek or Latin, that they thought, this can't be because we're superior. This is called racism. We're superior. So the only way that this Sanskrit, and Sanskrit is so much more precise, like we know English, there's so many different ways of pronouncing a particular word, but in Sanskrit there's only one way of pronouncing a word. And it's very precise, it's very scientific, it's a mathematical language. And you also have in Sanskrit and in the Vedic culture the decimal system. And of course, the Westerners, they try to take credit for that, but actually that came from India. And the decimal system is that which our computers are based on. Our whole number system is based upon the decimal system, the base 10 system. So this is like Western, they would try to establish Western superiority, and that's why they came up with this Aryan Invasion theory, that the only reason Sanskrit was so complex and so, let's say, dealt with so many complex philosophical issues is because that we, the Westerners, went there and invaded. It's called the Aryan Invasion. And we somehow or other married a bunch of those guys there too. Well, not guys, girls. So, because the people who invaded wouldn't have been girls unless they were Amazons. So they didn't have any Amazons at that time. So all these speculations about the age of the Vedas are based upon these presuppositions of the Aryan Invasion theory, or the change of language over time. But there's really no historical evidence on their part that proves their theory. We have historical evidence on our part that proves the dating, at least of the Mahabharata War. And that historical evidence is the evidence within the Mahabharata itself, which refers to certain astrological phenomena, or astronomical phenomena, stars in certain positions, eclipses at certain times, etc., 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 by which the scientists, through their computers, have been able to, let's say, turn back the clock and look at the sky the way it must have looked over 5,000 years ago, and then they come up to the conclusion that the descriptions of the Mahabharata are actually very precise, dealing with things that occurred 5,000 years ago. At least the description of the stars, the description of the moon, the description of the sun, the time of the year, etc., like that. And it's very precise. So even based upon science and computers, the Mahabharata can be dated, at least the events of the Mahabharata. The events of the Mahabharata. Now, one thing about Itihasa also, which is the Mahabharata is one of the Itihasas as well as the Ramayana. Itihasa means thus it happened. Of course, Purana means very old, but it's in reference to the 18 Mahapuranas and the other Puranas. But right now we're talking about the history, like the two main Itihasas, the two main histories of India, which are the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Those two there. So those particular histories were passed down not verbatim, but as histories. Whereas the original, what we call the original Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Tara, Samaveda, were actually passed down verbatim. Verbatim means every single syllable had to be passed down from disciple to spiritual master, from spiritual master to disciple. The rhythm in which it was chanted had to be passed down like that. So you have the original Sanskrit there, whereas the Mahabharata is more like a history story where it was passed down, so it's understandable, even though the Mahabharata was actually spoken or written so many years ago, the type of language would change. So that's another angle of vision. As far as the events of the Mahabharata, that's no doubt about it. As far as the language of the Mahabharata, maybe it's changed from the language. Just like if I was going to retell Macbeth, or one of my favorite stories is The Taming of the Shrew. Sorry about that one. Well, Shakespeare. I would actually put it in modern language. So it doesn't change the story, it doesn't change anything. So, and the Bhagavad-Gita is part of the Mahabharata. So, therefore, just looking at the type of language in the Gita, it doesn't necessarily indicate when the Gita was actually written down. And even if you look at the type of language in the Gita, it doesn't indicate when that language was used because of that, the faults in glottochronology. And all this is due to a Western, sorry, it's not me. All this is due to the Western bias in interpreting Vedic literatures. So that's the first point. So as far as the chronology, that's simply speculation, first of all. And secondly, okay, let's deal with the other subject matter. I'm just going to read the final paragraph that this this nice teacher said. As for the justifications of war, there are several problems in the Gita. It supports a caste system, which is based on rigid inequality. So, does the Gita, here's a question for all of you, does the Gita support a caste system? And if it doesn't, give me a quote. You should know this first. Yeah. Was that 4-3 or something like that? Or? So, Chaturvarnam ayashustam gunakarma vibhagasha. There's no mention of the caste system, because what is caste system? Caste system means basically birth. You're in a certain caste. I mean, that's just the meaning of caste. It means you're born in a Brahmin family, you're born in a Kshatriya family, a Shudra family, or whatever type of family. So, there's no statement that someone is given a specific role in society according to their birth. There's no indication at all in the Bhagavad-Gita In fact, the verse that was just quoted, Chaturvarnamaya Shristam Guna Karma Vibhagasha, that this Chaturvarnam, the Varnas, and that's really what they refer to when they're talking about castes. That means Brahman, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, Shudras are known, or someone is known to be a particular member of a Varna by his guna and karma. The word Janma is never used there. I don't find that anywhere. In fact, you have other verses, Mami Partha Vyabhashrita. You know that verse? What's the rest of that verse? Yeah, why don't you quote it for me? Pishu, so Krishna says, regardless of whatever type of birth you have, even if it's a sinful birth, you can achieve the supreme destination. And also other verses, Vidya, Vinaya, Samvane, Brahmini, Gavyashani, Shuni, Chaiva, Sampakecha, Pandita, Samadarshana. That the learned person sees all living entities, not only the human beings, exactly the same. And also, Krishna says, Aham Bija Pradapitam, the seed-giving father of everybody. I mean, that's another topic. So, there is absolutely no indication. There's no indication that that the caste system is being promulgated in the Bhagavad-Gita. But this is a big misunderstanding. This is a professor, piled higher, deeper, maybe. So the caste is a rigid inequality. Okay. And then her second point, is it lady teacher? Lady teacher? Okay. Her second point is that it hardly seems possible to go to war selflessly without any passion. So who can address that one? Did Narayan? How can someone, because in other words, she's taking the Gita as a justification for war because you're not the body. Of course, Krishna, in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he does make that point. Actually, you can't kill anyone, of course, anyone that can't be killed, you can't be killed, najayate mrite, va kadachan nayam bhutva va abhitava nabhuyaha. For the soul, there's never birth, no death, nor having said, once been, does he ever cease to be. He's unborn, primeval, is not slain when the body is slain. So, but that's not the justification that Krishna gives for the war. The justification Krishna gives is that it's a war, a dharmic war. Dharmic war means to what? Uphold paritranaya sananam vinashaya jadushkritam. Like Krishna comes to destroy the miscreants and uphold religious principles. And there's many justifications for war, which are mainly protective, because a Kshatriya's business is to protect others, not to wage war, but to protect others. And so the citizens are being protected from adharma. And that's really what's happening here. So a just war, so she says, how does one define a just war? A just war is a war to protect the citizens and engage them in dharmic activities. So one of the other things she says here, she says, some readers of the Gita, I won't give the person's name, have read war as a symbol of the internal struggle of each individual to live a good life. And of course, that's the standard impersonal understanding of the Gita without accepting the Mahabharata war actually occurred, in which they think that the Pancha Pandavas are the five senses, and the field of Kurukshetra is the body. But Kurukshetra actually exists. It's a place you can go to today. It's a plain. You can see where everything was fought. It's not simply a figment of the imagination. And the final one is, I guess I was going to test you on this. Uh, Caste, Dharma. Somehow or other, she puts God here always in small letters. So the final thing is that the Gita, which he's basically implying here, is the Gita is not a devotional text. It's a text that actually encourages, dharma, caste consciousness, and sometimes worship of gods, but not really any one particular god. So can anyone give me any verses that counter that particular point? Yeah, actually twice Krishna uses that, the first part of that verse, right? Twice Krishna said in the 18th chapter and 9th chapter, Krishna says, Manmana bhava mad bhakto, mad vyaji mam namaskuru. And then, Mami Vashasi, Tacham te pratijane priyosi me. So Krishna says, personally, become my devotee, worship me, offer everything to me, and thus you will come to me. And then also in the 10th chapter, Krishna manifests directly his position as the Supreme Personality of God in the nutshell verses. Ham sarvasya prabhu matak sarvam pravartate. 10:8. Everything, it's so clear to anybody who reads the Gita, and it's in the Sanskrit, it's not like an indirect interpretation. Ham sarvasya prabhu. Everything comes from me. Matak sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajanti ma buddha bhava samamvata. Everything flows from me. And also aham, not in the 10th chapter, but aham adari devana. I'm the source of the demigods. And then Arjuna is saying, what is it? Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam Vivahu. He said, you are the supreme Brahman. You are the supreme abode, the supreme purifier. And he says, I know this because what? Aham Tvam, what is that? Rishiyat Sarve Devashir Naradas Tata. Because the great sages say this of you. It's not simply my opinion. So there's so many verses like that. And then you go into the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita, which ends, and actually I wanted to read, the 12th chapter is entitled Devotional Service. That's what, to me, it's probably my favorite chapter, because I don't like to surrender to Krishna in the 18th chapter. It's too heavy to surrender to Krishna. But especially at the end of the 12th chapter, Krishna talks about all these people, all these entities or people who are very dear to him. He says, Yetu dharmatam idam yoktoktam paripasate shadadanam matparama bhaktaste tiva me priyaha. Those who, and this is in the Sanskrit too, Ye means those who, tu means but, dharma means religion, amritam, nectar, idam, this, yata as, uktam, said, paripasate, completely engaged, shradadanaha, with faith, mat paramaha, taking me as the supreme. There's no way of misinterpreting that as everything. Bhaktaha, devotees, those who are devoted to me. Te, they. Ativa, very, very, may, to me, priyaha, dear. So those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and are completely engaged themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, as mat paramaha, are very, very dear to me. And that's Krishna's conclusion in the 12th chapter, and then you finally get into the 18th chapter, sorry. And there's just no doubt about it. Of course, then you have, okay, start again with that. Of course, the famous verse is wait a second, I know Sarvadharma Parichaya. I want to get to something before that. Yeah, there's Sarvadharma, there's Manmana Bhavato before that, and then there's Sarvadharma Parichaya, Mamikam Sharanam Braja, abandon all varieties. Actually, this is interesting. This word religion, I was listening to a class where Prabhupada said, he said the best translation is not the word religion, even though here it's translated as religion. It means, Prabhupada said, duties. Prabhupada, in his class, someone said religion, and Prabhupada said, well, better word is duties. Give up all the duties and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Do not fear. And then, let's see. Anyway, so many verses here in the end of the Bhagavad Gita that illustrate the fact that the Bhagavad Gita is a devotional text rather than something that's advocating karma yoga or jnana yoga or the caste system or anything that's mundane or any worship of any demigod. It's perfectly clear. So anyway, these are some of the things I wanted to address. Anything else you said? She said, another thing she says, the Gita presents the core values of Hinduism. Here's another point. So, I don't accept that. Because if you think about what Hinduism is, it can refer to a whole bunch of other approaches to either spirituality or material existence. Even Shaktas are considered Hindus. Shaktas are those who worship the energy of the Lord. Those who are Shaivites are considered Hindus. Those who are impersonalists are considered Hindus. Practically speaking, that word arose as a geographical designation for those who lived in India. There's no real specific definition of what Hinduism is. It was never used internally as a designation or an identification up until about 300 years ago, 300 or 400 years ago. Previously, it was used by the external people, that means the invaders in India, who came to India, and of course the word Hinduism came from the word Sindhu, which was mispronounced by those who lived outside of India because they couldn't pronounce the S or Sindhu, and so it became Sindhu, and it became Hindu. So really, this whole concept of Hinduism is a misnomer. And so everything she says here is completely bogus and wrong. And she's teaching the Bhagavad Gita. So, anybody have any questions? Yes? Yeah, I saw that text. I didn't read it, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different. It isn't somehow.
Yeah, because I noticed in the beginning, let's see, in the beginning text. Oh, it says, it calls Arjuna as the monkey-flagged person. Because, in one sense, that translation is there, Kapi Dwaja. Kapi Dwaja, of course, it means the flag of Hanuman. So they're actually portraying things in a negative way. I read the first verse there. He said the monkey-flagged person, or the chariot with the monkey flag. Now that really prejudices your mind immediately. Like if I arrived in a car with a big flag of a gorilla on it, you'd probably think, this guy is just like, has problems. So someone goes to a battle and so you're saying someone goes to a battlefield with a monkey on a flag. But little do they know that's Hanuman. Kapi Dwaja means, literally it may mean monkey plague. But it refers to Hanuman. You have to know what it refers to, right? So there's no knowledge of, I'll read it later on when we talk about it. But the translation is completely off. And that's why Srila Prabhupada presented us with the Bhagavad-Gita with the word-by-word translations. So we can actually look up these words and see. And it's so obvious when Krishna uses the personal pronoun again and again and again. Aham adiri devanam, mam manmana bhava mad bhakto mad yaji mam namaskuru. Then it's so obvious that he's referring to himself. And it's so obvious that Krishna is calling himself the Supreme God. Aham Sarvasya Prabhu. So, who else has a question? I just want to touch, yes. Yeah, could you speak louder?
Sorry. So my question was that in the Varnas, like we were discussing the caste system, right?
Yeah.
Why does that not apply to kings? So the kings in the Vedic time and ever since in India, the sons of kings also become kings.
Yes.
Right? So why did it, and that's where a lot of arguments come up that even though, like, if somebody's born in a Shudra family or in a Brahmin family, they also carrying out the same tradition that the head of the state is following.
That was generally the case, but there are stories in the Mahabharata where the king's son was rejected and someone else, and I don't remember those exact stories right now. What's that? What? Yeah, Shantanu, that's right. So there's many stories where the king's son was not chosen. And there's some stories where a sage was chosen to be the king rather than the king's son. Generally, it's understood whoever is the most qualified. It's not always primogeniture. Of course, primogeniture means the oldest son. Like in the case of Dhritarashtra, he wasn't chosen. Of course, Pandu was chosen instead of him because he was blind. So basically, the Brahmins would examine to see who was the most qualified, and generally it was the king's son. And the reason for that is that, as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Usually people with particular propensities have children, genetically, who have children who are so inclined. That's why the marriages in the Vedic system were arranged properly between people of different, I don't want to use the word caste, but between people of similar varnas. And there was a conception of pratilom marriages or anulom marriages, types of marriages that were permitted, types of marriages that were discouraged, because it was understood that there should be a proper combination of the men and the women so the proper children could be born. But it wasn't always the case that someone born in a Shudra family, for example, in the Vedas, you have the story of Satyakama. I don't know if you know that story. Satyakama, his mother was, let's say, less than chaste. Or maybe she was chaste. Anyway, I don't understand. Do you understand the play on words? She was chaste. Not chaste, chaste. No. Nobody understands what I just said? Okay. Chaste means that the lady stays with one man. Chaste means I know it sounds exactly the same. She was chased by many men. So the mother of this particular individual was chased by many men, okay? She was chased. And so her son went to Gautama Rishi and said, I want to be your disciple. And Gautama Rishi said, the only persons I accept as my disciples should be Brahmins. And he said, what's your father's name? And he said, I don't know. That wasn't a problem. And he said, Gautama Rishi said, go back and ask your mother, because your mother should know. I mean, most cases. It wasn't even Kali Yuga, so your mother should know. So he goes back and asks his mother. His mother says, could have been him, or him, or him. And she says, basically, I don't know. And that's before they had this, what is it called, when you can examine someone's genes? Like you can take a little swab off of your cheek and send it in. What? Yeah. DNA testing. That's before they had DNA testing. So he goes back to his guru, and he says to Gautama Rishi, he says, we don't know who my father is. And Gautama Rishi said, what? You're Brahmin. Why are you Brahmin? Because you're telling the truth. That's why it's called Satchakama. And he accepted him as a disciple. And then on the other hand, you had Karna, our friend Karna, who went to Parashuram. And Karna was by nature a Kshatriya. But he didn't want Parashuram to know that he was a Kshatriya. Why? Because Parashuram has this thing against Kshatriyas. Because Kartavya Arjuna killed his father. He just doesn't like Kshatriyas. You don't want to be a Kshatriya around Parashuram. And he killed him 22 times. Anyway, 21 times. So he goes to Parashuram and says, can you be my Guru Maharaj? And Parashuram says, what are you? And he says, I'm a Brahmin. And Parashuram said, good. I can become a guru of Brahmins. So what happens is that he begins to instruct him, Karna. And one day Karna is serving his guru. Karna is serving, I guess it's like the pillow of his spiritual master. His spiritual master is resting. And this big insect or a spider or something with a lot of legs on it begins to burrow his way into Karna's body. And Karna is thinking, I cannot disturb my Guru Maharaj. And he clenches his teeth, which is Kshatriya. Like you see, even in America, in the old days, if someone got a bullet in them, they would just put a bullet between their teeth so the doctors could remove the bullet without anesthesia. That's called biting the bullet. So he just bit the bullet. It wasn't a bullet, but literally he was just doing that. And then what happened is some blood dripped from his body onto his guru's body. And the guru woke up, Parashuram woke up and he said, what's this? And he said, blood, Guru Maharaj. And Guru Maharaj said, let me just look at this one thing. Guru Maharaj said, where'd it come from? He said, from me, Guru Maharaj. How did it come? Because this bug was burrowing into me. And Guru Maharaj said, why didn't you wake me up before that happened? He said, I just wanted to tell her. And he said, I understand you're a Kshatriya. And he got so angry that he cursed his disciple to forget all the mantras when it came time for the disciple's ultimate battle, in the battle of Kurukshetra. And that's why Karna, he actually forgot his mantras, because he was cursed by his spiritual master. Also, he was cursed by the earth too, because he killed a cow by accident, and the earth cursed him that at the time of the final battle, the earth would swallow up his chariot wheel, and he wouldn't be able to get his chariot wheel out of the ground. So that's why Karna died. So in any case, Parashuram was identifying people according to their guna and karma, not according to their birth. It's a perversion to consider that someone's birth indicates their position in the varnashram system, because it's not mentioned anywhere in the Gita. Now, I'm not talking about some of the secondary literatures that have nothing to do with spirituality, but the Bhagavad-Gita itself. We're just talking about the Bhagavad-Gita right now. The Bhagavad-Gita has nothing to do with prescribing a caste system. There's not a single verse. There's verses that indicate that people should act according to their nature. That's true. There's verses that advocate varnashram. That means everybody has a specific type of nature, and we should serve Krishna according to that nature. Right? That's all. You know, you're a Kshatriya or a Vaishya, you're a Shudra, you're a Brahmin, that's fine. You can change too. Like Visvamrita Muni, he changed. Of course, it took him a long time to change, but one can change their varna by the right association or by improper association. You can go up or down. So anyway, so all these statements, most of these statements are completely bogus. Yes?
On the last point too, it's also not that the people that are Shudras are on the lower castes are lower, right? That's what the caste system nowadays is that the people, the lower you go, you can even become an untouchable. It's bad. But back then, Shudras were, I mean, it's
Not necessarily the Gita considers them lower, it's different.
yeah, because everyone can reach the goal.
Everyone, no matter what position one is in, one can reach the supreme destination. Now, one is known to be of a particular varna according to the modes of nature that affect them. Now, Shudra is primarily affected by the mode of ignorance. And Shudra is someone who laments, quite a bit laments, and gets depressed, and all those other nice things like that. And then a Vaishya is someone who is actually wanting more and more and more and more material acquirements. And a Kshatriya is one who has the inclination to protect others. And a Brahmin is some of the Bhakti-Bhakti-Cham, one who is actually equipoised, practicing, studying, like that. So it depends on what one is attracted to. And of course, Karnam Guna Sangasya Sadasa Janama Jonishu, one acquires a particular position in the varnashram system according to the modes that they associate with. So if you associate with someone who is a Brahmin, and you keep your association in that way, then it's very likely that your mode or your varna will be Brahminical. It's all based on association. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes? Yeah.
I have one question. So as you said that Hinduism is like a very broad way of describing someone. A lot of people could be put into that same category.
Yes.
Even if they have very different characteristics.
And beliefs, yeah.
So how should we describe ourselves? What's the best way to describe ourselves?
There's several different descriptions. One is, I know it's a name of another group. We're Sanatan Dharmis, you can say. Even though that's the name of a group, there's a group called the Sanatan Dharma. But Sanatan means eternal, and the Dharma in this particular case means the quality of something that can't be separated from it. In other words, eternal quality of the soul, eternal relationship with God. That's what we are. But in a more precise fashion, you can say that we're Vaishnavas, worshippers of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna and his multifarious expansions, such as Vishnu, Nrsimha, Kurma, Varaha. I think the word Vaishnava is actually quite more specific than any other word you can use to describe us. We're Vaishnavas, were worshipers of one God. Like under the guise of, or the nomenclature of Hinduism, you can find people who are polytheists, who believe in many gods. I mean, many times I've gone into a Hindu center and they say to me, "Here are the gods." I said, "Which one should I worship?" And they say, "Which one do you like?" And of course, Prabhupada tells that funny story about the gentleman from England who went into a Hindu temple and where there were many gods. And he said, pointing out to Radha and Krishna, he said, "That's the supreme God." And the priest, he didn't know who was the supreme God because he hadn't read the Bhagavad-Gita. He just knew a lot of rituals. He said, "How do you know? Why are you saying this?" He said, "Because all the other gods, they're all working. One of them is meditating, one of them is writing down. But this particular God, he's with his girlfriend playing a flute." So if you find someone who stays with his girlfriend eternally playing a flute, that must be God. So that's why to use the word Hinduism, I mean, sometimes, yes. Sometimes if we're talking to the press or something like that, we'll say that we're a branch of Hinduism. Just so that they don't get confused. I mean, you got to really understand your circumstance. If someone says you're Hindu and you say, "No, we're Sanatan Dharma, we believe in Sanatan Dharma," that goes way over their head. So they have to put you in a particular category. But if you really look at the word Hindu or Hinduism, it doesn't really mean anything. Many times I've been at the university and the teacher says, "Can you explain to us what Hinduism is?" And I said, "I don't know." And they said, "Well, you're supposed to be studying this thing." I said, "I don't think anybody knows because it's so multi-branched. And the word itself is never in the Vedic literatures. It's just not a Vedic literature word. There's Sanatan Dharma, there's Vaishnavism, there's Ishvara, the Supreme God, Parameshvara. There's other words like that, but you don't find that particular word in the Vedic literatures. But sometimes we'll use it just if we happen to be in a particular circumstance speaking to certain people, just so that people don't get confused. But as far as internally, we are Vaishnavas. We believe in one God, Ekala Ishvara Krishna, Arasa Vrija. His name is Krishna, Vishnu, Nrsimha, the same personality, Advaita Chuta, Nadi, Urananta Rupamadhyam, Purana, Purasham, Navayovanam Cha, as described in the Brahma Samhita. So, any other questions? Yes? Yeah. 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 Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Yes. It's yeah. Yes. Yes, it's quite a dangerous thing. I mean, the university can be very useful for mathematics and science and computer programming and what else? That's about it. That's about it. We're giving one skills. We're giving one skills so that they can make money later on and do some productive activity. But as far as the philosophical presentations at the university, they're based upon methodological atheism. They approach religion. If you take a religion course, it's approached from the concept that religion is basically, as Karl Marx said, the opiate of the people. In other words, it's something for people who are not so advanced. And it's actually, that's really based upon a type of neo-Darwinism, where that people in the past needed religion in order to survive, and as they're advancing, they no longer need religion in order to have society. So it's an outgrowth of neo-Darwinism, the teaching of atheism, and even the teaching of religion from the external viewpoint, from the presupposition that actually it's all illusion, that religion is an illusion. So just the very angle that religion is taught from, it's taught from an atheistic viewpoint. So it is quite dangerous when the children go to school. And that's why, I offer my services that if any of the children are going to school, they have these doubts. Like we have this one very, very nice devotee, who's going to school, who presented to me, that of course is Raja Leela. She presented to me some of the things that she's learning about the Bhagavad-Gita. And it just makes me very upset to hear those things because they're completely wrong. And so anybody who has children or adults or whatever who hear those things or have any doubts, they can approach me or Narayan Prabhu, and I can actually explain how the teachings at the University of the Bhagavad Gita, most of the teachings are actually completely bogus. It's very dangerous, yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of times what we'll find is, let's say in our Indian community family, is that the children feel like this is what we were raised with when we were children, and now we're going out into the world and we're being given higher education. And so they tend to equate it to something their parents did, where someone who was raised in the West and they've grown up with this and they're researching and they come to Christian consciousness, they don't have the rebellion against their family and that will tend them to accept that. In fact, it's the opposite. They're rebelling against their family and taking to Christian.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting dynamic. When you get Western people taking up Krishna consciousness, they've chosen to do that because of their own philosophical search. Whereas many of the members of people brought up in an Indian family have been taught the same thing, but they haven't arrived at the conclusion through their own philosophical search. So it's not really as integrated into them as it may be into someone who has actually found Krishna consciousness from searching. So it's their faith may not be as strong because it's something they heard from their parents, but at the same time they see all their peers in school believing something else. So it's a challenge. So myself, as a Westerner, and the devotees here as Westerners, and of course I do understand the Bhagavad-Gita. I've been studying the Bhagavad-Gita for over 50 years. I offer myself as someone who can actually explain these things to the children of our families that are going to the school and becoming confused by what they're hearing. Because naturally, being raised in the West, we become enamored by the Western technology. And then people may look at other countries where they're not so advanced technologically and think, the technology is actually success, is what I want, and this religion is very primitive. So this is generally what is being taught. As I said, it's actually coming from neo-Darwinism. That as society advances, the need for religion is no longer there. It is only there for a primitive society, and that's really what's being taught in these different courses. Not only courses on the Bhagavad Gita, but also the courses on the Western religion too, to a large extent at the secular universities. Okay, I think the natives are getting restless. It's hard to speak when everybody's eating. So, Narayan Prabhu, do you have anything you'd like to say?